Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name is Stephen Walsh. I am Planning Research Consultant with Future Analytics Consulting, and the title of my presentation to you this morning is Enhancing Societal Resilience in European Urban Infrastructure. I suppose when I first saw the titles of the presentations that were being delivered this morning, I was a bit interested to see how they would all tie together. But essentially, in order to relate them to the two that's just gone before me, the idea would be that I'm going to give kind of a higher level overview of a concept which I think incorporates elements of what the other speakers are talking about. That is resilience. Resilience is one of these terms. It's been around since I suppose in a systems ecology type context since the early 70s. It's contemporaneous with sustainability, and as we are moving into an era now where we're adapting to the consequences of climate change and all the other pressures that arise from that in terms of the multipliers to man-made threats and everything else, it's interesting just to get a sense of how we're going to plan to react to, I suppose, make the most of our existing urban environments and then future-proof them as well. And I mean, when we're talking about the urban environment, it's out the window. You're talking about hotels, leisure, commercial, transport, residential, all of the elements and all of the systems therein that, you know, operate every day to generate economic activity, generate the energy that powers our economies and society, and, you know, right down to getting your coffee in the morning. So, a brief company plug. Future Analytics is a planning and economics consultancy. We're based in Fitzwilliam Square. We specialise in, I suppose, data analysis and generating evidence-based solutions and defensible solutions to societal problems, be they commercial, be they social, and be they right down to environmental matters as well. In terms of the service line that we offer, we have a broad range and it's evolving all the time. So as the first speaker this morning spoke about solar, the solar sector in Ireland is in its infancy. Planning policy around it is also underdeveloped. We're looking at how planning practice and how planning policy can be upskilled to have account of a new paradigm of renewable energy generation. Just at Christmas we published a study of why people object to solar PV installations ground mounted in the country. So that's where we're at. We're trying to position ourselves at the cutting edge and we're doing quite well. We have a very competent and very built up software development side as well. So not only are we just looking at the data sets, we're also looking at the most innovative and most effective ways of bringing those data sets to decision makers and people. So in terms of resilience, we've been well positioned for participation in a number of FP7 and Horizon 2020 projects, be they Harmonise, which looks very much at security in the urban environment, COBOCORE, which very much looks at the community perspective, so enabling people who reside in the urban environment to actually take an active part in the recovery process from disasters. Intact, which looks more at the impact of extreme weather events on critical infrastructure and resilience, which is very much resilient focused, and its aim, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, is to enhance and safeguard key components of infrastructure in our environment, so that we can actually build up and go beyond the standard kind of risk analysis type approaches which have coloured the manner in which resilience or concept of resilience in urban environments have been dictated to. That's an awful lot of words. Essentially, resilience is the ability of a system or systems to survive and thrive in the aftermath of a disaster. And in the context of critical infrastructure, resilience processes offer a proactive, cyclical and holistic extension of standard risk management practices. The idea behind that is, essentially to build on the societal angle to something that's been much more quantitatively dominated through, ISO standards for infrastructure management and everything else. And I suppose the two images at the bottom are to illustrate that the concept of resilience, or at least the motivations in the human mindset to want to make settlements survive and thrive. The picture on my left is a set of town walls that have been 600 years ago to keep guys that you didn't want to come in out. They also come in handy for tax inspectors to collect duties at the gate. Some might argue that tax collectors haven't evolved beyond that mentality yet, but anyway. The other example is a set of walls, essentially. This is both from the same town, Clonmel, my hometown incidentally, where we've built flood defences. So 600 years have passed, we're still responding contextually differently, but to the same outlier, which is a threat to the ongoing productivity and sustainability of our urban settlements. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. the background to this is, since the late 90s and going further back, the pressures that are putting themselves on our urban environments, or anywhere we're massing services and we're massing infrastructure and we're massing people, have been increasing in nature and complexity. The Paris attacks is one example, as tragic as they were. Examples of heat waves, flooding recently in the Midlands, all nuanced and difficult threats and different origins for those threats to quantify and respond to. This kind of illustrates it a bit better, where we have all of these pressures putting, potentially jeopardizing the critical mass and the viability of our settlements. So essentially, when we're talking about fostering urban resilience, what we're talking about is protecting economic growth, safeguarding the environmental integrity of our towns and cities. We're looking at pressure from non-traditional and traditional angles, so man-made threats and climate change, the consequences of climate change, and how the two intersect. You might be familiar with some of the studies that were done around the influences of climate change and drought on the origins of Syrian civil war. It's looking at developing and codifying how we can respond to these challenges and how we can involve society in doing it, and going beyond what we would consider to be standard approaches to resilience, which is keeping pieces of infrastructure going and bringing the societal element on board. The work of Hollings in the 1970s essentially brought or started to put the concept of resilience in some sort of codified manner. It was mainly around systems ecology, but since then, in tandem with the evolution of considerations around vulnerability and sustainability, we've started to see other disciplines, so engineering, politics, the social sciences, all developing their own particular spins on what they consider resilience to be, and they're all just as valid and just as effective as the other. I suppose essentially bringing it further and bringing it to our own research. Essentially, we're going beyond protection and actually proactively informing citizens on how to respond. Standard approaches, so on, for the moment, are mainly ISO standards based. They're all very good, but they're all expecting the expected. We're moving into an era now where we're expecting the unexpected, or we need to be able to respond to the events that traditionally wouldn't be accepted in people's mindsets as being, viable in terms of occurring. So, in the aftermath of Paris, for example, when we were questioning our own capacity to respond to events such as that, we found that our own capacity to respond wasn't actually as developed as we thought. So it's an example of, I suppose, building or counteracting the sense that that can't happen here, or that mentality at the very least. So in terms of the shortcomings in existing resilience approaches, understanding not only the urban but also the regional and national implications of incidents that jeopardise critical infrastructure is a key thing. Modelling and simulating and analysing, and essentially all of the rest of it. It essentially boils down to the fact that we've got quantitatively based processes which struggle to take into account the qualitatively based elements of how societies interact. And I mean, the role of the citizen there is highlighted at the bottom. Essentially, the experience from Hurricane Katrina and the aftermath undertaken by Boyne and McConnell indicated that the citizen and society is well capable, and indeed in some ways knows how to react to adverse incidents better than some infrastructure providers, some government agencies, and everything else. In terms of looking at the current approaches in this type of diagram, business continuity in the financial sense, and indeed financial management of financial strength, they've been big ones in Ireland for the last 10-15 years, and big ones in a European sense. But what we're looking at now is the evolution of the 100 resilient cities concept. The work that Siemens is doing in and around their Green Cities Index and the spin-offs from that. We've also got the UNI SDR, which we'll talk about a bit more in a second, in terms of developing a scorecard that helps decision makers quantify the resilience of the cities. And then we've worked by colour from the mid-2000s, which essentially starts looking at the robustness of critical infrastructure. So, in terms of looking at the UNISDR scorecard, which is a piece of work that's ongoing between IBM and ACOM, as well as this UN agency, the key item for this would be item 7, which is understanding and strengthening societal resilience, and that's where we are positioning ourselves as. leveraging the knowledge and expertise and insights that we've gained from the Core project, the Harmonise project, Intact, feeding all of those into developing risk knowledge, developing warning systems, developing systems to actually respond to that, and then disseminating those findings as widely as we can. In terms of enhancing strategies to resilience, the key point is to just examine the manner in which people actually conceptualise how how an adverse event might affect them, how it affects their daily routine, and the infrastructure that facilitates that. And that's where we're bringing the Resilience project. So Resilience is a Horizon 2020 funded project looking at the development of a suite, essentially, of decision support items. So we've got an audit toolkit which consists of, I suppose, a key tool for some of the members here today may be how they can evaluate the resilience of their own processes and indeed the infrastructure that they rely on. So in terms of logistics, in terms of energy providers, and indeed government. So one of the partners in this project is Irish Water. Component of that would be understanding and assessing how resilient their particular infrastructure bodies are to withstanding disasters. A bit ironic, but anyway, the long and the short of it is, it's the type of tool that we're going for, and this is just a few rough slides of how that's actually going to look in practice. So the idea would be that you would actually engage with the tool as an infrastructure operator. It's also going to be targeted towards government and key decision makers, citizens, anyone really with a stake in maintaining an effective control over resilience during adverse events. And then I suppose it's integrating this particular type of data visualization and mapping. So essentially you're going beyond just giving people a survey, but you're actually codifying and processing what you're getting back. You're understanding where key pieces of infrastructure are in an urban area, and then you can actually move towards looking at how to react in the case of an incident which takes out a number of these pieces of infrastructure or compromises their capacity to act, and how does that interface with your responses in terms of emergency services, in terms of how do citizens react if it's something that compromises logistics or food chains. It's at an early stage, but moving towards the end of the year we'll be looking for individuals. I saw a few visible cringes when I put this up, that's fair enough, but the idea would be that we could leverage the insights of industry in order to make sure that the tools that we're developing are sufficiently robust and advanced in order to actually make a genuine contribution to the manner in which you undertake your business. So the impact of adverse events on infrastructure in the environment, and in the urban environment particularly, can be mitigated and responded to. So in terms of a few things to close with, I was asked to conclude with a few motivating statements. Disasters are becoming more common. I don't know how motivational that is. As a response, societal engagement and involvement is essential, because essentially the capacity of society to manage its own needs in terms of those outside of key decision-making bodies, as evidenced by the work that was undertaken in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, can actually dramatically improve the recovery phase of the resilience cycle. And it's essentially contributing to developing an evolved sense of resilience that goes beyond the standard risk analysis methodologies that I outlined there all but briefly. Thanks very much for your attention. My contact details are there, and if you have any questions you can happily give out to me later or approach me outside. Thanks very much.